Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 569. We've got a great guest with us. We've got Ben Gabler, founder and CEO of RocketNet. It's going to be a great discussion. I'm going to let Ben do a quick intro. So, Ben, over to you. Maybe you can give us a quick 20-second intro about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. My name is Ben Gabler. I've been in the hosting industry for about 17 years now, dating all the way back to employee number 10 at HostGator. Had my own hosting company, HostNine, and, pretty big notable position at GoDaddy, where I relaunched all the hosting products in 2013. And, from there kind of dabbled in some startups and ultimately was the chief product officer at a company called StackPath. And that's really where I learned a lot about CDN and web application firewalls and all that fun stuff. And, one of the companies we acquired is pretty famous in the WordPress community is Max CDN. And, through that acquisition for over 2 years, I was working really close with a lot of WordPress users. And that's kind of where the idea for Rocket.net was born.
That's great. My co-host Stephen can't join us today, so you just got me and Ben, but it should be a great discussion. Before we go into the main part of our discussion, I want to talk about one of our major sponsors, and that's Kingston Hosting. Kingston is a specialized WordPress hosting provider. If you've got a client or you're looking for performance for your own website, i.e. if you've got WooCommerce, if you've got a learning management system, a membership site, anything that needs real performance, Kingston is a good choice. So we've been using Kingston for the past couple of years. They host the WP-Tonic website. They've got a fantastic team, great technology, great support. So I suggest that you go over there, have a look at some of their plans, and then go and buy one. And if you do that, can you do the show a real favor and tell the Kingston crew that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show? It really helps Kingston and it really helps the show as well. So thank you for that. So Ben, to say that you've got a lot of experience in hosting would be a slight understatement, wouldn't it? It's a very interesting industry. Are there a couple of things that you think the general public, maybe you can give us some insight on a couple of things that you think the general public's not aware about when it comes to hosting? Have you got any kind of quick insights that you think would be really interesting to folks?
Sure. So it's a very small industry when it comes to the companies involved in the hosting space, and we're all friends. So I've been really good friends with Matt Russell, over at Namecheap. He runs the EasyWP brand and launched the hosting products at Namecheap years ago. And we met back in 2006, and we have a Slack group where we're kind of the team of people that we've met over the years, whether we're at competitive companies or vendors. We all kind of just talk very frequently and help each other out. Tom over at Convesio, it's a really friendly industry. We all really help each other, and there's no bad blood as, oh, you're my competitor, I can't talk to you. It's really exciting and a fun industry to be a part of.
Right, but that's great to hear. I understood, I had Chris Lemmer from Liquid Web on the show about 6 or 8 months ago, and he pointed out something to me, because I get the impression that hosting is dominated by a handful of really major players, but he said I was incorrect with that hosting is still a very fragmented industry with a lot of small hosting providers. Is that correct? And is that still the case?
Absolutely. Speaking of Chris, he actually put out a really awesome article that I read the other day about challenger brands. And I absolutely loved it. And it really resonated a lot with what we're doing here at Rocket.net, where there are the WP Engines of the world, the Bluehosts and the SiteGrounds, but what we're doing is something much different. we've put a unique spin on it. It's not just some cPanel hosting that you log in and install WordPress. We've got a really unique product and platform that we put together based on that 17 years of experience. So, when we think about it, even from our perspective, while technically the brand may be the new kid on the block still, we've got some of the most seasoned people that have been in this hosting space for a very long time. So we were able to learn from a lot of our mistakes and, build things pretty, very quickly. And that really goes a long way when it comes to, servicing our agency customers, or even, our just retail customers, right? Like if they need something done, we're not just there to kind of, support the customer, but we also listen to them and try to really help build things that improve their day-to-day operations. And, I think that's just one example of a way a company, in this industry can still stand out and have an opportunity to grow. And then on the flip side of that, you have a lot of smaller companies that might manage 25 to 100 websites, and they're using reseller packages and almost like a micro host, and they're more hands-on like a designer and managing the websites. But I feel like almost a couple times a week I'll come across a new hosting company that I've never seen before, and some of them are pretty decent in size.
All right. So you kind of pointed out that you think Rocket's got some unique elements to it. Would you like to delve into a little bit more detail about what you think is some of the unique selling points of Rocket?
Sure. So, back, at StackPath, we would see customers every day coming in trying to connect a CDN and a WAF to their WordPress site. And the biggest problem was, almost all the plugins out there for caching would only do a CDN integration with static assets. So every single request to the site would still go back to a single location. And with that, customers wouldn't really see a major improvement on their speed test, results. So we would see a lot of churn. And, we just started thinking, like, what if there was just a way that customers could point to a solution no different than any hosting provider they have today? It's got the CDN already optimized and enabled for WordPress. It's got the web application firewall already configured and optimized for WordPress. And that's it. Right. So, there's no need to go in and tinker with settings. There's, you don't have to learn what a CDN is like I had to do. Right. We just want to make it as easy as possible. And then, take all of that and put it into a single package. So, when an agency or a retail customer comes to our platform, they just deploy a WordPress site. It takes like 30 seconds. And then it's already got CDN and security solutions like malware scanning, real time, everything all in one. So, we have customers doing 40,000 hits a minute on our platform, and we serve it at a 98.9 cache hit ratio with our Cloudflare Enterprise setup. And that's something nobody was doing. And, the reason is it's similar to like if you were to go to watch a Netflix show. If you see that spinner and it just takes a while, you're going to get frustrated pretty quickly these days and either say, you know what, I'm just going to watch Hulu instead, or it must be down. So the same concept applies to the web. When I go to a website, if I just see it sitting there and hanging, I get a very bad, impression. I'm like, why is this taking so long? Is it down? Is it up? Like, what's going on? So, what we do is we actually focus on pushing content as close as possible to the visitors. And instead of things like scaling PHP, right? Because scaling PHP is great, but it's still only one single location. So if my site's in Ohio, but I have customers in Germany, that doesn't do anybody any good. So, that's the biggest differentiator with our platform is we kind of built it in a content first approach to make sure that we could really optimize for that visitor experience across the world.
Oh, right. That's fantastic. So how long did it take you to build out the Rocket 1.0? How long was you and your key team players working on it before you unleashed Rocket upon the world?
So the initial MVP phase was a little less than 90 days. A lot of that comes from, we knew the developers we could work with. We knew what we wanted to have built. And we've back at HostNine in 2008, I built a platform called Reseller Central. And that was, what we called kind of location-based hosting back then. You could choose US East, West, Central, EU, and Singapore and deploy a site there. And at that time, CDNs, Max CDN was probably getting out there, but there wasn't really a concept of that. But you could still put your site closer to you when you're working on it or whatever the case is. And then one of the features we developed was the ability for our customers to say, oh yeah, by the way, install WordPress for me after it creates the account. So we've kind of done this before in a different way. And what we did is we just kind of took the tools that we were familiar with over all the years and create this single platform. And people are like, well, you've only been around for a year. How do you know that the Cloudflare stuff's configured properly? I mean, I ran one of the largest CDNs in the world for 2 years. So I got to see thousands and thousands of different WordPress sites and how they interacted with caching at the edge. And, we were able to kind of, I was able to take that learning experience and apply it on the Cloudflare platform. And it's just been incredible.
Yeah, I can see you having that experience would help. So, I think yesterday WP Engine announced that they're investing a lot of money and time in headless WordPress. There seems to be a trend with GoDaddy made an announcement yesterday that they're revamping their Pro Tools again. There seems to be where hosting providers like WP Engine are adding extra services, extra product offerings to make themselves stand out. Do you think this is a trend that will just continue, that they're going to buy more external plugin companies? Liquid Web have done quite a bit of that lately themselves, haven't they?
Sure. I mean, not necessarily speaking to the acquisitions, but I hope so, right? Like, I hope the desire to be different is a trend that continues, because what happened with commodity shared hosting, Bluehost, HostGator, SiteGround, a lot of these companies, SiteGround made some unique decisions to kind of create their own platform and ditch cPanel, and that gave them a little bit of a different stance in the industry. But at the end of the day, for the longest time, the majority of these companies were just selling the same thing. Like, it was all the same: cPanel hosting, SiteLock, CodeGuard, right? And it's all the same. And where's the differentiation there to really help provide different solutions in the market? And a lot of it boils down to service and support. At the end of the day, anybody can go out and buy a server with 32 cores and 128 gigs of RAM. There's a lot of really smart people out there that can optimize it. But I think when it comes down to the productization and actually creating that offering is really where the challenge comes into play. And a lot of the world freaked out when cPanel kept raising their prices. And for me, I'm like, that sucks, right? Like, nobody ever wants to pay more. But at the same time, if you look at what cPanel's evolved in over all these years, it's pretty incredible. I've been using cPanel since version 3, and that was back in like 2003. And it's a great piece of software. And if anything, I hope it really challenges the hosting companies to figure out ways to increase their price points in a healthy way by offering more services and things like that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, that was a very unique way of seeing it, because I've heard other people say, well, it's so commoditized, that's why they've got to add these extra services. But the way you put that is, I haven't heard that before. Thanks for that. We're going to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had a feast of hosting information from Ben Gabler, founder and CEO of Rocket.net. Before we go into the second half of our discussion, I want to talk about a webinar I'm doing with Spencer Forum, one of our panelists on our Friday show. As you know, Spencer has a company called Launch Flows, and we're going to be talking all about how, if you've got a learning management system like Lifter LMS, LearnDash, if you want to really get into marketing automation and increase the experience of your students, we're going to go through all the steps that you need to do to have a modern membership website with marketing automation. And we're going to be doing that on Friday, the 12th of March. So the 12th of March at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. And if you join us live, you can ask Spencer and myself any questions you have about marketing automation with a focus around learning management systems. So how do you sign up for that? Well, you go to the WP-Tonic website, right in the top navigation, there's a button that says webinar. You just fill in a quick form and you will be sent a link where you'll be able to join us live for that free webinar. It should be a blast. On to the conversation. Now, you know, I think in the kind of world that I'm in, you've got actual business owners, and then you have the larger community of designers, implementers, as I call them, and developers. And around the kind of implementer world, Cloudways has really, is one of their beloved providers. Vulture, high frequency Vulture is mentioned in hush tones, Ben. Why do you think there's any things that people got to understand if they want to go down that route? They've got to understand what they're getting involved with. Have you got any kind of insights or thoughts about that?
Sure. You know, all great companies mentioned. You know, I worked with the Cloudways team quite a bit when I was at StackPath. You know, great folks over there. They have a great product. You know, it's definitely more towards the advanced user. They've done a great job at trying to help even bridge that to make it, you know, consumable by a less technical individual. But, you know, there's still a lot of management that goes into having a server like that, right? You know, security measures and, you know, updates and all that fun stuff. So, you know, it's definitely can still be overwhelming. And, you know, folks, I see a lot of it in the Facebook groups where, you know, oh, $30 a month, you know, that's expensive. You know, I can just go get a VPS for $15 a month. And it's like, okay, well, that's the $15 a month for the VPS. And then you've got $10 a month for the software, whether it's, you know, Run Cloud or whatnot. $10 to $20 a month if you want Cloudflare Pro, right? And it starts adding up, and then you're at $50 a month. I'm like, whereas with a product like ours, it's $30 a month for one site, but you're getting CDN, WAF, you're getting Cloudflare Enterprise, $6,000 a month per domain, typically starting if you go direct with them. So, you know, you kind of build these, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is trying to get creative with your offering instead of just a traditional hosting. And what ends up happening to us is we get looked at like, oh, that's $30. Bluehost is $3. It's two totally different products, right?
It's a totally different cup of tea, isn't it?
Right, exactly. But to the, you know, to the consumer, they don't necessarily see it that way, and that's been one of the challenges. Also, is kind of, you know, helping people absorb that, understand that. You know, but, you know, even Vulture, David Ananowski, the CEO, lives 20 minutes from me, you know, in South Florida.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, great guy. You know, we actually were emailing earlier this week about, you know, getting together and catching up. You know, it's a great company, and they've got some great stuff going on, and it's neat to see, you know, how Cloudways can really package that all up. So, you know, I think it's definitely a great product and a great platform, and I think it's got a specific niche that it does speak to, but they're doing a really good job at it for sure.
Yeah, I think if you want to go down that route, but it's definitely a kind of niche area, isn't it? Because I think the people that are kind of involved, or the people it really appeals to, tend to underestimate, in some ways overestimate, in some ways underestimate a duality here. But they underestimate the amount of technical knowledge that they probably have compared to the average business owner that just wants his website to run properly and be fast and to be available to their customer base, don't they, Ben?
Yep. Absolutely. You know, it's I can't tell you how many times customers have come to us in chat and said, "Can you restore this one file from yesterday at this time?" And it's, sure, you know, even though we have tools for them to do the restores on their own inside the portal, but that's the level of service that we like to provide, is, you know, being able to kind of be the team, right? And that's a big part of our, you know, unique selling point here at Rocket.net too, is, you know, this isn't marketing agency that wanted to turn hosting company, right? Like, we've lived and breathed web hosting for 17 years. So our customers get, you know, these hosting industry veterans that have been doing this stuff forever, and can really support them in many different ways and give advice, and you know, that have seen it all. You know, I've seen, you know, small scale when HostGator was just starting to grow, and then I've seen GoDaddy adding thousands of accounts a day when we launched the cPanel product there, and even the managed WordPress product. So, you know, seeing things at scale is really important. And, you know, when it comes to even how we're going to scale our business to make sure that we keep that level of knowledge high, is, you know, we have a huge Rolodex of individuals we've worked with for, you know, 10 plus years at various hosting companies that, you know, are just, hey, when you guys are ready, let us know. And then, you know, as we start to help spread that knowledge even to newcomers, you know, we have very skilled and experienced people that can help, you know, train.
Yeah. On a strange tack, I think what we've just said also applies on the enterprise level, because not recently, but last year, I had a major client and they were talking about hosting this internally. And then we're just going to use that. It was a very large website. I can't go into too much detail, but it was a very, very large website. And they were talking about using Amazon Web Services and managing it themselves to save a couple $100 a month. And I just said quite clearly that I just felt this was a very bad idea. But they didn't listen to me. But it didn't work out. Let's put it this way, Ben. It didn't work out too well in the end, and they moved to a specialized hosting provider in the end. Do you see that a lot, where I like quite dominated by Microsoft, and they don't really understand what they're getting involved if they're just getting into hosting without any kind of real knowledge, do they?
You know, it's interesting. Like, we don't really see that too much, because a lot of the SaaS startups, or, you know, companies that will have a marketing division with a website, that they don't want marketing knocking on their door at 2 a.m. wondering why WordPress won't update, or, you know, they're like, you know what, like, you can go over here, right? And you know, we see quite the opposite, where companies actually don't have a problem paying for our platform, especially even on an agency level, because once you get into volume with us, it gets down to like, you know, $9-10 a month per site, and for all that you get, that's a bargain. And, you know, these companies that come to us, some of our larger enterprise customers, you know, doing, you know, terabyte of traffic a day on the platform, you know, we have Slack channels set up. If they need anything, you know, there's no need to jump through hoops on live chat, or, you know, go through the help desk. You know, it's just in live chat. Hey guys, I need this, and sure, no problem. And it's just instant. You know, everybody uses Slack these days, so, you know, it makes it really easy to communicate and, you know, again, solve the problem that the customer has.
Yeah, I think this particular one I was pointing out is that they were not that happy about the top echelon of this business deciding that they were going to use WordPress. It was a very dominated Microsoft shop, the IT.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying now.
And I think that was part of the problem there. So, and you do get that occasionally, but I would agree with you. I would have thought most startups, SaaS, it's the last thing they want to deal with. They've got some bigger problems to deal with than what we've just outlined. So, what do you think's in the next year? Do you think there's anything on the horizon in the hosting world that you think's coming up that our listeners and viewers aren't aware of at the present moment?
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see, you know, just similar to a much larger focus on performance, you know, outside of the we'll increase your site 2 to 3x because we're on Google Cloud, right? Like that's, when we talk about how fast we are, it's science, right? It's the speed of light. It's because if you're in Jupiter, Florida, like I am, I'm not going to go all the way to Ohio for the site. I'm going to grab it from Miami because that's the closest Cloudflare pop. So, when we think about, I think kind of like what we talked about earlier, I think these companies are really going to have to start thinking outside of the box and coming up with new value adds and new ways to enable success for their customers outside of just here's a pool of storage and bandwidth, have fun with your website, right? I think there's more things that they'll need to do to help ensure success, especially after COVID-19 and everybody that's got to get online, online ordering systems and all these different things. I think that's going to become big, and a bigger focus is going to have to be, because people have problems that they need solved, and they don't always know to just go look for XYZ plugin that ties into WooCommerce to take an order, right? So I think you'll start to see some focus on specific niches like that when it comes to some of the shared hosting providers and others alike. And then I think there's going to be a big focus on how to tackle the core Web Vital requirements for Google. And, like what partnerships will these companies do? I mean, a lot of people don't realize it, but Google Cloud's very expensive when it comes to margins and hosting, right? So, and it's not always the CPU and RAM that gets expensive, but it's the traffic, the ingress and egress to your machines on Google Cloud. So it gets very tricky for companies to be able to do what we did, where we can bundle in CDN and WAF and all these things without charging extra for it, because our cost model allows for that, and we still have healthy margins because of the way that we've built the platform.
All right, thanks for that. Well, hopefully, are you okay to stay on for another 10 minutes, Ben?
Sure.
And we call that bonus content. You'll be able to watch the whole interview plus the extra content on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. So go over there to watch the whole interview. So, Ben, what's the best way people can find out more about you and Rocket?
So right at rocket.net. I'm always available. I always will be. I remember even when I was at GoDaddy, the team was like, "Why are you in the call center so much? You're a product manager. You don't need to be in." I would spend hours in there, and I'm like, I can't fix it if I don't know what's broken, right?
That's the best way to find out what your users are thinking, isn't it?
You'll see me in chat at rocket.net till the end of time. I absolutely love working with customers, and I love solving problems, and I really love to make sure our roadmap really aligns with customer needs. So there, I'm on Twitter as well. And then of course, LinkedIn, always happy to connect on LinkedIn and get to know others as well.
And I love the background. Actually, you have to join us for the video listeners. He's got a very appropriate background for a company called Rocket. So we'll be back next week where we'll have another fantastic guest. I've just got to say that in the next couple of months, we got some amazing guests coming on the show, and thank you to the new listeners and viewers. Our numbers have dramatically increased over the last few months. It's great to have such an influx of new people listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another great interview. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye. Oh, I can see his arm. He's back again.
Sorry about that.
What was it like working for a company like GoDaddy then, Ben? Because it is the kind of monster-sized company in the hosting world. How long was you working for them, and what were some of the key things that surprised you and you also learned from working with them?
It was awesome. GoDaddy was the first real corporate world I saw, right? Being in hosting, even at HostGator, it wasn't very corporate.
Oh, wow.
It was just, we're a bunch of young people that got into hosting, right? So, GoDaddy was very different, gearing up to IPO and it was an incredible, priceless experience, you know. And when I got the call about GoDaddy being interested to talk, you know, I immediately thought the opportunity to move the needle at $1 billion company, that doesn't happen every day. I'm in. I don't care. I want this. And you know, it was great. You know, I got to go in and, you know, we just completely rebuilt the hosting offering using cPanel for the Linux stuff and Plesk for the Windows stuff, and then a homegrown solution for WordPress. And, you know, it was just really neat and awesome to really be involved with that and seeing that scale that I've never seen before. And there was a really great team. Like Blake Irving was awesome. I loved working for Blake. You know, it was you know, he was a great leader. Jeff King as well. You know, Jeff's on the board now at Liquid Web, but working with Jeff was really awesome. And, you know, my first week there, we went and did due diligence on Media Temple and bought Media Temple. And it's like, hey, welcome to GoDaddy. By the way, we need you to look at this little company. Have you ever heard of Media Temple? I'm like, yeah. So that was my first week, you know, and I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. So yeah, it was great. You know, I know GoDaddy has an interesting reputation online, but you know, what I used to like to say is, you know, GoDaddy is the stepping stone to the internet, right? So you know, that's where people buy their first domain. That's where they might buy all their domains. That's where they buy their first hosting account. And, you know, we really had to optimize for that. You know, we had to build an entire custom cPanel theme in-house, because logging into cPanel and clicking email accounts and having to figure out how to create an email account wouldn't fly. You know, we created our own wizards, and ultimately that theme is what became Paper Lantern for cPanel. You know, they actually took our theme and took a lot of inspiration from that. And, you know, we worked pretty closely with them as they did that. So, you know, it was a really great experience. Really fortunate to have.
So I think what I'm getting from your reply is that you found the culture to be progressive, and you think that some of the criticism, they're not really understanding because of the scale of the business, and because of the scale, you're dealing with a lot of different balls in the air, really, and unless you're in that kind of environment, you don't understand the particular, I'm looking for the right word, Ben, I wouldn't say strains, but it's a different environment than a boutique or a smaller company has to deal with. Would I be right about that?
Big time. You know, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges is they're huge, right? Thousands of employees, right? So like, I was in the call center so much, but then you're like, well, which one? We had Tempe, Gilbert, Scottsdale, right? And I'd bounce around to all these different campuses that we had at GoDaddy, and sometimes it'd be hard to see the same person twice in a week, you know? So it's challenging when you get to that scale. You know, some of our customers like, we love the size you're at now, and I'm just like, look, don't worry. Like, this experience isn't changing. Like, this is what we know is valuable, and that our job is to scale our culture more than it is to scale PHP, right? And you know, I think it's just the scale that GoDaddy operates at. You've got a call center that's profitable and has to be. Then you've got to support people. Where do you properly draw the line to not sacrifice revenue for retention? But then also, it's like a double-edged sword, right?
So how do you think is the attitude of GoDaddy and the other bigger hosting providers towards WordPress? Because obviously with Gutenberg and with the investment from the arm of Salesforce, that it's pretty obvious that WordPress.com is going to be an ever larger hosting provider themselves. How do you think that's affected the attitude of the major hosting companies, and what's the attitude towards WordPress in general?
Nothing but positive. You know, the question comes up sometimes, you know, in other conversations I'll have, is like, well, you know, is WordPress, you know, a threat, right? And the answer is no. I mean, today, whatever, you know, WordPress is now over 40% of all the websites on the internet, right? So they can't service all that themselves. GoDaddy can't service all that themselves. They just can't, right? And it's a huge market. So, one thing that, we kind of talked about at the beginning of the call is how all of us hosting companies are really close and friendly and help each other out. And I feel like that's one of my favorite things about the WordPress community too, is everybody's super helpful. Like I have friends that work at Kingston, right? I have friends that still work at GoDaddy. I have friends that still, work at Namecheap, and, we all communicate and help each other out whenever we can. And, I think WordPress is very much the same way. It's a very tight knit community. Everybody's super friendly, always willing to help each other out. And there's no, egos, that's the biggest thing, and I just think it's great. So, I think GoDaddy, even on one of their earnings calls, last year, I forget which one it was, but they talked about how much WordPress contributed to their growth. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. Like, that's GoDaddy, all the products they have. And they specifically mentioned how much of their growth was attributed to WordPress. And it's great. So, I think, even Bluehost, right? Like, there's a huge history there between Matt Heaton and Matt Mullenweg, right? Like, the Bluehost and WordPress early on worked really closely together. Bluehost, Matt was giving them servers and Matt was deploying WordPress. And, that's why you'll see, Bluehost has that pole position on WordPress.org. And there's just a great relationship that's been there since day one. And, that just kind of speaks magnitudes to how, Endurance, another announcement, they were basically acquired, they acquired web.com and kind of rebranded. But, it's in everybody's best interest to continue to invest in WordPress and support that growth. And, it's just going to do nothing but help everybody.
Because it was time goes really quick, doesn't it, Ben? I think it was over 2 years ago. I had I forgot. I apologise. I forgot the name. It was the CEO of SiteGround, and
Tinko.
Yeah, Tinko, an interesting guy to say the least. They kind of, because they're based in Bulgaria. They were originally solely based in Bulgaria, and they kind of pushed their way into, to become a major player in the WordPress hosting. I understand that they got out of certain markets. I think one of the major one, well, probably wasn't major because they wouldn't get out of it, or they got out of the Indian market and they got out of some other countries. Was you surprised about that, or is it always these other regions like China, India? Are the margins so low there that it's not really worth competing in those areas?
Yeah, it gets difficult, right? When you're thinking of budget shared commodity hosting, there's not a lot of room to have operations in another country like that, right? Like, that could have very well played into, some of their decision behind that. But, I think it even could be chalked up to just the economics of scale. Like, was it scalable for them to maintain their service level by really, it's like they say, like, having one restaurant is super stressful. And it's like 9.9 times out of 10, somebody that tries to open another one at the same time, they fail, right? It's just very hard to expand sometimes like that. So, it could have very well just been, hey, we've got this amazing business. We tried to go a little bit bigger into these other markets, but it's proven difficult. Let's kind of dial it back maybe a little bit and keep our, service levels where they should be.
I mean, it's not exactly linked to hosting, but on our bonus content, I like to ask our guests, related questions, but not totally related to their specialism. I noticed lately that when it comes to the WordPress plugin, some of the most innovative plugins and new players seem to be coming from Pakistan, of all places. There seems to be a lot of really great WordPress coding shops based in Pakistan. Have you noticed that? And also, it's interesting to see how the action kind of moves from one country to the other in a way, isn't it?
Sure. I think we definitely see it globally. We do have some affiliates and agencies that we work with in Pakistan, but I think it's really speaks to how WordPress has done such a great job at diversifying it's, community, right? And it's not a US based product. It's not a European based product. It's a global product. And, I think over the years, WordPress has become so plug and play, for lack of a better word. I think it's really enabled a lot of people to start building on it. And I think that's what's one of the most powerful things about it is, there's a plugin for that. All right. Like maybe we should make a t-shirt for that. There's a plugin for that in a good way, and I think what they're doing with Gutenberg is just, it makes sense, right? Like going into full site editing makes total sense. And I think that's also, there's a lot of design shops in Pakistan, right? Like akdesigner.com. I've worked with them since 2004. Same owner, Amar, same owner, same business, Pakistan. Great. They do amazing work. I've worked with them for literally 16 years. And, I think as the technology starts to evolve into this full site editing and more plug and play with plugins, it gets a lot easier for these agencies and designers to adopt it.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we'll wrap up the interview. Thanks, Ben. It's been a blast. You have to come back on the show later on, and we have to feast on hosting technology again. So, Ben, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and Rocket?
Sure. Right on our website, rocket.net. We actually just rolled out a bunch of updates today, including our really cool little astronaut that we know.
Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah.
Well,
he matches up the background. I was very impressed. T-shirt background. I thought, yeah, he knows how to market.
My wife would be really impressed with that too, because usually it's just happens by chance. But LinkedIn as well. Find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect. And really appreciate you having me on the show. I'm looking forward to coming back soon.
It's been great. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.